Degenerate cop Repeal Sticks is going through an unpleasant fix in life. His spouse has recorded for separate due to his awful propensities. In any case, this doesn't halt him from proceeding his shady dealings. Within the evening, Sticks meets with his assistant. Gino will get another installment for his help to the cop's part in this plot is straightforward. Through Gino, he cautions the expansive group almost up and coming ambushes being set up against them as the assembly concludes. The two parts way but abruptly adhere. Takes note something bizarre. A man in a showy cover is murdering somebody. Wearing ruddy shoes adjacent, Sticks checks the victim's beat, and after affirming that there's nothing he can do, he starts to chase the executioner. The cop corners the criminal, but the scalawag demonstrates faster. He thumps the Sticks out, shoots him, and dumps his body within the water for a number of hours. Later, Raphael slithers shorewards, still uncertain of what happened to him. The man analyzes his hands and notices a bullet gap in one of them, but he doesn't feel any torment finding a bundle of cash in his stash. Sticks keep in mind in vital assembly and heads to a friend's house at the woman's put. He inquires for a number of minutes to alter dress and dry off, but another Astonish is standing by him. He finds another gap beneath his shirt. Panicked, Raphael surges to the healing center and inquires to be seen without enlistment. An ancient colleague of the cop, Dr. Franken, reacts to his ask. The specialist welcomes Sticks into his office to look at him and give help. Rankin checks the patient's pulse, but the gadget appears a total halt. At that point, Bankin tries to require a few tests. Close the wound, but Sticks loses his mood and insects. The cop goes domestic to clean up whereas no one is around, but at the entryway, he is met by his pooch, which for the primary time responds aggressively to its proprietor, locking himself within the lavatory. Raphael looks at the wound and expels the bullet. His involvement tells something bizarre is happening with him. Such a wound, he shouldn't be lively. At long last, Sticks reaches for his phone and tunes into messages. He should drag himself together to go to work and choose up his kids from school. On the way, a cop illuminates his colleagues approximately a wrongdoing. On the waterfront, he arrives at the scene, but officers Delacqua and Pax are shocked to report that they found no proof of SXS's story. Dumbfounds his companions. The forgotten phone, the wound, all appears like a mislead them. Nearly as in case you sense this, Raphael begins to induce irate, and something bizarre happens to him. Seizing the minute Sticks plants the bullet he expelled from himself. The cops discover the proof and send it for analysis. Sticks tries not to draw on his family's consideration, but this demonstrates troublesome. At supper, the man assaults the nourishment. He doesn't take note how he eats everything on the table, and within many minutes his body rejects the overabundance. The family translates this behavior as the consequence of a wild night and denies to conversation to the crazy person. As it were, his small girl comes to consolation the ancient man. She embraces her father firmly, and at that minute, something huge stirs in Sticks. Realizing that he has to do something almost at Raphael returns to Dr. Bankin, inquires for offer assistance from the specialist, concedes that he won't be able to assist until he completely ponders this irregularity, and he offers his visitor to stay in his lab. SXS denies to be a guinea pig in the doctor's lab and chooses to fathom his issue on his claim. After going by the specialist, Raphael heads to his companion, Amanda's put, but there he experiences Gino. The fellow has chosen to bargain with a backstabber who didn't caution the pack around the police snare. He assaults the cop and is stunned to find that his weapon has no impact. Sticks do not indeed feel on the opposite. Gino's animosity gives Raphael quality, and he tear off a chunk of the guy's arm to fulfill his starvation. After the experience with the mental case Gino, he goes to a bar, but there he is met by pack individuals who are troubled with his behavior for selling out them. Gino is murdered, and his body is dumped in a landfill. Raphael's hand begins to tingle, and he evaluates the gauze. To his astonish, he finds that the wound has mended, and his palm looks solid. The forlorn ancient man turns off the TV and goes to bed. As before long as he falls sleeping, the man within the dramatic veil shows up within the room, and he sets up an observation camera and discreetly clears out sitting in his car. The stranger expels the veil, uncovering Dr. Rankin underneath. Raphael's girl recognizes the veil that she drew for distinguishing proof, takes the ancient man to an exhibition hall and shows him a portrait with the precise saying "confront" delineated on it. All through the day, a few individuals tell Sticks that he smells repulsive, but he doesn't care. His center is on finding the one who turned him into a living dead. Amid a discussion with Commissioner Lena Kitts, Raphael tries to discover out how the examination is advancing, but it gets to be clear to him that he is among the suspects. Raphael takes a shower, but the unsavory scent as it were gets more grounded. In addition, he takes note in creepy crawly that's settled in his wound. The cop is panicked once more, and heads to the specialist. Rankin sends the persistent for an MRI and finds that as it were his brain is working in his body. The rest of his organs have long ceased to live. The doctor advises Raphael To dodge warm rooms and hot showers, he gives the persistent a bomb utilized in morgues and suggests utilizing solid aroma to mask the repulsive odor. The specialist too uncovers that the man doesn't have long. His brain will proceed to operate as long because it is fed. Raphael has no thought what the caring specialist is stowing away. When Bankin returns domestic and plummets into his lab, he fills Stick's journal, calling him his most recent subject. Other than Sticks, there are other examples within the lab, including the fellow within the ready tennis shoes to protect his body. Raphael makes an unordinary choice. He rests in a cooler, holding up until everybody takes off. Sticks develop from the cooler. All of a sudden, somebody tries to assault him, but the hungry zombie battles off the blow to his confront changes, and the notable turns into a scrumptious breakfast. Coming to his senses, Raphael looks around in frightfulness, rapidly cleans the region and surges to the shower to wash off the proof of the wrongdoing. The remains of the guest are wrapped in sacks and tossed into the trunk, but Raphael doesn't oversee to take off unnoticed. He is met by his accomplice. Delacqua SXS tries to remain calm, whereas controlling the discussion around work things, but a tireless thump comes from the trunk, and Raphael fears his mystery may be uncovered. When the thumping catches Delacqua consideration, Sticks chooses to induce absent from his accomplice. He inquires the fellow to step out for a minute and rapidly drive off. Raphael takes his wanderer to a forsaken put and finds out that the man is still lively. The stranger uncovers that he was hired by the man within the cover. Sticks are required as an example for the cop. Chooses to set a trap. He sends a message, posturing as the professional killer, but Dr. Franken doesn't drop for it. He observes the accessories through covered-up cameras, not knowing what to do. Following with his hungry, godlike companion, Raphael takes him to the specialist and takes off him within the lab. In the interim, on the edges of the city, somebody too assaults a part of the gang. Raphael's morning starts as regular, within the cooler, but this time the man feels interesting. He appears to be getting more youthful and looks much superior in his children, and caretakers take in note this as they meet the head of the family within the kitchen for Dr. Rankin. Raphael's blessing turns out to be a genuine stroke of luckiness. Carefully thinks about the fabric and takes notes that occasionally the specialist clears out the remains of a leg to conversation to its proprietor, who is bolted in a cage. After one such discussion, the specialist must take a shower, and at this time his small girl enters the lab. Rankin scarcely oversees to spare the young lady from being chomped by the zombie at the final minute. From the commissioner, Raphael learns that the bulletin investigation is total. His benefit weapon wasn't hailed, but the genuine proprietor is obscure, whereas endeavors to discover the offender have brought no comes about it. Here return to the specialist, trusting that at slightest a way to remedy his sickness has been found, but Rankin concedes that so remote it's a complete zero. He's considering the irregularity but doesn't know how to induce freed of it. The detainee recognizes the cop who turned him into a zombie. He inquired the man to spare him, or at slightest bring him a few nourishment. In his save time, Dr. Franken and his spouse works at a protect for destitute individuals. The caring specialist encompasses the terrible with consideration, winning all-inclusive adore and regard. Raphael takes note that his hand is getting more awful. Once more, he applies the balm given by the specialist to cover up the signs of rot and the obnoxious scent, but the changes are surpassing the cop when he sees a mouse. Intuitive kicks in, and Raphael doesn't indeed realize how he eats the creature. The specialist is so concerned approximately his patients that he indeed visits one of them. At home, old Martha opens the entryway to the specialist without fear, ignorant that within a miniature, he will calm her. Martha comes to her faculties as it were a number of hours afterward. She doesn't get it why the specialist has tied her up, but rather than explaining, Bankin chokes his visitor, whereas Stick sets out to discover his accomplice. Dell he finds a fellow another to a mangled body, and before long the offender is uncovered. The modern zombies turn out to be Gino. He recommends that Raphael connect powers and begin chasing individuals, but the cop denies to take after his instinctual. Driving to a battle between the men, tragically Gino oversees to elude within the morgue. They look at the body that Raphael found. He tries to deceive the specialists, but they instantly recognize human chomp marks on the casualty, whereas the specialists are active. Examining the interesting body, Dr. Franken proceeds his tests, which appear to be appearing victory. The specialist pours an unusual substance into a syringe and infuses it into Martha. Tragically, patient's heart can't take it, and the frantic researcher drenches her body in a extraordinary arrangement for living a still life, ignorant that his specialist is up to such things. Raphael visits him and takes the remains of his previous companion. The cop fulfills the ancient man's final ask. He takes him out to ocean on a vessel and brings down him into the water. Reflecting on the unceasing Stick's look at his palm, which proceeds to darken, the rest of his body proceeds to rot as well. In spite of the cooler, amid a joint strike, Raphael loses control once more and assaults Delacqua. The zombie oversees to halt in time. But his accomplice takes note something is wrong. Dr. Franken accumulates all the volunteers from the protect and conversation, almost a few modern accomplishments. No one gets at what he's talking almost at the same time. A few issues are taken note. With a security watch within the Central Commerce Center, the great doctor's spouse welcomes a youthful man who has fallen on difficult times and has no cash to remain at their domestic positioning permits the visitor to remain. But the man is astounded by the questions, almost well-being and way of life, that the have inquires him. All of a sudden the youthful man begins to feel unwell, and the specialist inquires his spouse to take off and take their girl with her. The crazy person at that point takes the victim to his lab within the Sticks family. A modern issue emerges and his child has fallen in with a terrible swarm and was captured for burglary. The cop tries to clarify the rules to the youngster, but a battle breaks out between them and Raphael loses control and assaults the boy. Raphael clears out domestic to dodge doing something appalling. He suffers from the bad dream his life has ended up to save his family. Raphael moves to an ancient watercraft. Within the Commerce Center, it's found that the security protect appears no signs of life. All the news reports are talking almost how the body was made by an obscure person. Raphael's spouse tells his colleagues around the later occurrence, and Lena goes in look of her companion to discover out what happened to him. The cop puts on a hood and turns off the lights so that his companion can't see him. He inquires why Lena was trying to find him, and to the commissioner appears the copper recording from the trade center cameras, which appears a man conveying the security guard's body. Raphael's spouse finds the charge for the MRI that Sticks she inquired her spouse to meet, and Sticks should cover his confront with establishment to stow away the spots. Sometime recently the assembly, Sticks stops by the morgue and analyzes the security guard's body, but after he clears out, the deliberate finds and curiously detail almost one of the patients within the fridge has been gesture on SXS holds up for Isabel in a cafe, and when she arrives, he guarantees her that there's nothing to stress. Approximately, it was fair, a routine checkup, and he's fine, but his spouse suspects that usually a lie. Raphael is acting unusually, looks exceptionally awful, and at the conclusion of supper, he begins to feel sick without assist ado. Isabel turns to the family specialist, Bankin, but the Pro 2 guarantees her that everything is beneath control. SXS is fair anxious around the separate and is appearing signs of stretch. Dr. Russell's spouse suddenly goes down to the lab and finds the detainee there, but she needs the metal to unfasten him, and the lady escapes. The specialist suspects that somebody entered the storm cellar in his abs, but the prisoner guarantees him that no one was there. After analyzing the understanding, Rankin can't get it why the infection isn't working on him. At long last, the researcher finds the reply, and equipped with a rope, he stops the guy's heart. A postman takes note that Martha isn't reacting to the doorbell. A number of hours afterward, the commissioner educated almost a moment interesting body that was being arranged for long-term storage. Raphael's girl arrives at the vessel to visit the ancient man, but he has another scene and drives the young lady absent. Ronnie doesn't make it domestic. She's seized by Gino and his accessory. Upon finding her daughter's disappearance, Isabel arrives at the vessel, but something goes off base. The blonde wakes up to discover herself chained to a pipe. Raphael moreover chains himself so as not to hurt his spouse. He tells her the entire truth about his circumstance, and when she doesn't accept his story around zombies, he offers her his hand so she can feel the absence of a beat. Strides are listened over, and Isabel begins calling for offer assistance, but the guests turn out to be more awful than the zombie spouse. On the upper deck, Raphael finds Gino appears the ancient man a photo of Franny and sets a condition for Holder bringing the slaves must enter the city without obstructions, or the young lady will pay for his botches. A therapist addresses the open evaluating the high-profile wrongdoings. He states that the individual dependable is rationally sick, and there's no telling what they'll do. Another the pro words profoundly annoy Bankin. He indeed goes to the cemetery to complain to his mother. Almost to the frantic specialist tells the headstone that before long his still lives will come to life and stun everybody, indeed more. Raphael should tell Isabel that their girl has been captured. He moreover concedes that he collaborated with the hoodlums, and presently they need his offer assistance, realizing they have there's no other choice. Isabel inquires her spouse to free her and utilize her as prey to recapture his quality, but the zombie cherishes his spouse as well much. He cuts his chain, kisses the lady, and takes off to protect Franny. Raphael visits his companion, but she demands that she doesn't know where Gino is or where the girl may well be, but the cop's companion is lying when Sticks clears out and goes upstairs to Franny's room. One of Gino's men takes after Sticks, but closes up getting to be his prey. Raphael reestablishes his quality, but his colleagues capture him at the wrongdoing scene. Sticks manages to come up with a reason for being there. Fair as the specialist is approximately to urge freed of his spouse. She confesses that she was within the lab. The lady accepts it's all for the purpose of science and is willing to assist her spouse with his tests. Sticks returns to the pontoon. He discharges his spouse and inquires her to go domestic and hold up for news. Dr. Rankin sends into the lab with his spouse and appears her his work. work. Lady takes note the body of the later visitor whom her husband fizzled to revive in spite of her frightfulness. She concurs to assist her spouse, and they lower the fellow into the arrangement together. Deliberate recognizes Sticks and offers assistance. He's willing to keep observe, so no one enters, whereas the cop has lunch and recaptures his quality, but Raphael is occupied by a phone call. Gino reminds him of the bargain, which enacts Gino's accessory phone and plants it in an irregular car. It appears everything is going concurring to arrange. Amid the operation, the commissioner orders Dell'Aqua to follow the flag and take off. The runner transport for afterward, but in spite of the boss's orders, Dell'Aqua heads to the dispatch to halt the pack. Sticks should thump out his accomplice to maintain a strategic distance from gambling his daughter's life. The commissioner sees the versatile phone in a destitute woman's car and realizes they've been misdirected to divert them from the transport of living cargo. Raphael holds up for human trafficking to wrap up and for Gino to return Franny to him. In the meantime, Dell'Aqua recaptures awareness and heads off to discover the bootleggers. Takes note the group pioneer eating on one of the activity boys and the cop open fire, but the bullets have no impact on Gino. SXS goes up against Gino face to face and requests his girl back. It gets to be clear that the hoodlum never expecting to keep his word, and the zombies arrange to battle a long time back amid and capture. Sticks broke the rules once more and didn't call for reinforcement. It finished in catastrophe. He incidentally harmed Amanda's daughter Rose. Presently Franny's life is in Amanda's hands, and it's up to her whether the young lady lives or not. Gino returns to SXS's vessel to wrap up off his equal, but the proprietor is prepared for the experience and does everything to discover out where his girl is. Lena confesses to Dila that she made a botch and presently needs to capture Sticks a number of hours afterward. A police squad arrives at the vessel, but all they discover is Gino's protective cap and a few dark stains, uninformed of what's happening. To his quiet, Dr. Bankin proceeds his explore with the fellow arranging to turn him into another still life. He's hindered by a call from Raphael, who advises him of an unused example, but the zombie doesn't make it to the doctor's house. His vision begins to fall flat, and he gets into a mischance when Raphael gets out of the car and finds the trunk where Gino was lying empty-handed. Arrives at Dr. Rangin's house and inquires questions around Sticks, but the specialist oversees to evade the discussion, which Raphael observes closely from the following room. The zombie isn't as well concerned. Almost his colleagues visit. He's trusting the specialist has found a remedy and will before long re-establish him to ordinary, but in step Franken addresses his persistent almost as a dream to spare the world could be a brilliant thought. Happens to the specialist. He inquires Sticks to chomp him so he can test the disease on himself, but Raphael denies to pass on the appalling infection and holding back insects. The lab. Raphael heads to the healing center where his ancient father is remaining. The dazzled ancient man is cheerful to listen his son's voice and inquires him to at long last let him resort to killing, but Sticks appears to have another arrange. The zombie takes his father out of the clinic, in spite of the nurse's dissents. By the time Isabel arrives at the healing center and the men are gone, they go to the shore and Adhere draws quality from his father, who readily concurs to end it up prey, but the ancient man doesn't pass absent instep after the nibble. He opens his eyes and sees daylight for the primary time. The ancient man appreciates the dusk, but he realizes he cannot offer assistance his child. He takes Raphael's hand and brings the weapon to his claimed sanctuary. A shot rings out. The doctor's and used example is prepared, and his spouse makes a difference. Franken bundle Raphael's vision, in any case, proceeds to break down. In spite of the boycott, he turns on his phone to see a photo of his girl. At that minute the cop reviews the day he inadvertently shooting Rose. The cops arrive at the spot from which Raphael's phone flag was finally identified, but the zombie get away once more, taking off his previous colleagues meandering along the shore. In the meantime, Sticks arrives at Amanda's house and finds his girl 15 minutes afterward. Gino arrives at the same put. He tries to move unobtrusively and look at the flat, but as it were Dr. Rankin is standing by him. Within the room, Raphael incapacitates his rival, and the specialist cuffs him, but Franken anticipates his persistent from wrecking the adversary, demanding that they require him to discover a remedy. Amanda takes Franny domestic, doesn't set out into the house to be with his girl and spouse. He plans to take off, but Deloy shows up behind him a number of weeks afterward. Prior radio broadcasts report that a few cases of feathered creature flu have been enrolled in a little area. One of the bird bit its proprietor, and after many days afterward, the proprietor got to be a casualty of the frantic specialist. As usual, Rankin put her in a tank with the arrangement and many drops finished up on the floor. A bullet afterward fell there, which in the long run finished up in Raphael Sticks's heart. Is this basic chain of occasions driven to what happened to the cop? Sticks enters the doctor's house with his hands tied, went with by Dell'Aqua, but before long the parts turn around and the cop wakes up up in Rankin's lab. Gino takes note the unused visitor and proposes Dell'Aqua that they group up to elude, but Styx enters the room. He pulls out his previous partner's phone and records a confession of all his degenerate deeds in return. Raphael inquires for a favor to allow him a few time to discover the man within the cover. Dell'Aqua concurs, and the men take off the scientist's house, but Styx learns of a fire at the Cultivate, where his child was included in, and it gets to be clear that the search for the man within the cover will ought to be put off. Rankin thinks about Gino's test and cites his pet to nibble him, but the criminal suspect's something is off. He denies to eat so as not to share his blessing. Isabel permits Styx to see the children, but when they are alone the lady inquires her spouse not to donate up trust and to accept in a remedy, whereas Rankin visits an ancient colleague. Spouse goes down to the storm cellar to free Gino, but her benevolence turns awful once free. The young lady gets to be the zombie prey. Styx accommodates with Isabel, and amid the method, the zombie was in him. Stirs the lady and tries to calm her spouse, but it doesn't work in his most seriously minutes. He can't control himself. Dr. Rankin finds his wife's body. He falls flat to rebuff the offender, and Gino get away. Styx enter the room fair as the specialist is washing his wife's body, but rather than advertising condolences, inquires his companion to let him take tests once more. Cops overseen to track down Gino's fort, but it turns out to be Purge. The as-it-were thing Dell'Aqua finds could be a bullet that Dr. Franken let go into the criminal this time. Gino seizes Amanda's daughter, and Styx concurs to assist his companion Gino. Baits the Combine into his sanctuary, but it's as of now as well late. Rose is hungry. Wrapping up off the remains of the devourer, the sociopath locks all three in a cage, arranging to have a few fun, but a police squad breaks into the refuge. Gino tries to elude AP, and he nearly succeeds, but at the final minute Dell'Aqua shoots him in the head. Raphael inquires his colleagues to take them to Dr. Bankin to spare Rose. After analyzing the girl, the specialist says he encompasses an unused cure, but he doesn't know how it'll work, whereas everybody holds up for the doctor's offer assistance. Lena gets the comes about of the ballistic examination. Raphael at long last realizes that Bankin has been lying to him all along. The zombie doesn't have time to ensure his colleague. The specialist puts on the mask once more and opens fire, but Styx fire back, and the scalawag falls to the Raphael visits his family, and Isabel trusts they will be together once more. But it here inquires her to get it, it's outlandish, and he can't live among people. The man arrives at the shore with Dell'Aqua, inquires his companion to assist him, in case he can't drag the trigger himself, but at the final moment, the dim substance inside him wins a degenerate cop, washout and an alcoholic. His spouse is approximately to separate him. His father, a dazzle ancient man, needs youth in Asia. The specialist may be a crazy person who imagined of restoring individuals, but seen never succeed. One day, a specialist brought in an ancient lady for tests who had been pecked by an ostrich tainted with winged creature fluid from this contaminated ancient lady fell onto a bullet that afterward hit the cop and turned him into a zombie. He decayed, stank, and needed human substance. He turned to the specialist for offer assistance, not knowing that the specialist was the criminal behind the cover. All through the film, he trusted that the specialist would make a remedy and spare him, whereas holding up, he indeed ate the legs of his ancient father. But within the conclusion, everybody learned that the specialist was a scalawag, and there would be no remedy. Styx went to the field to shoot himself, but at the final moment, the zombie within him took over. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Leave a comment about your favorite movie, and we will make it next. Thanks for watching.